Well, I want to bring into the conversation someone who spent a lot of time in the academic world. She is a best-selling author. She is also just an incredible political observer and an award-winning political scientist. Our good friend, Dr. Carol Swain. Dr. Swain, good to have you with us today.
Thank you so much.
So I know that you've spent a lot of time in the academic world, and I'm curious, were you surprised, and what was your takeaway from these hearings that we saw earlier this week on Capitol Hill?
I wish I could say I was surprised, but I'm not surprised because universities have lost their way. And that's one of the reasons I took early retirement from academia. And I can tell you that one of the most astonishing things I've witnessed as a professor was the number of Jewish students over the years that were anti-Israel and pro-Palestinian. And some of them now in their 30s, I've had conversations, and they realize now, what it means to be a Jew, that people have shifted. And if there's any good to come out of this, it is that Jewish Americans who have been progressive, many of them are awakening to the fact that they are Jews, that there's something different about being a Jew. And I believe that I'm usually against identity politics, but when it comes to one's culture and the significance biblically as a Christian of the Jewish nation and the Jewish race, I think that Jewish people, I don't know what's politically correct, but I think that it's good that these young people are coming to realize that they are targeted. There's no home for them among progressives.
Dr. Swain, I'm curious, what do we do? And that seems to be the big question a lot of people are asking. How do we respond to this? Is it the donors? Is it moms and dads? Do they need to put their foot down and say, no, we're not paying tuition to an anti-Semitic university? How do we fix this problem?
Well, first of all, it's such a national problem, and I would not even consider the U.S. government as really being a pro-Israel government in a way that it can be trusted. And I think when it comes to colleges and universities, the donors and trustees certainly have a role to play, and parents should not be supporting institutions that are teaching hatred. But what you find is that the neo-Marxists have taken over those institutions, and the pro-Palestinian groups, Hamas, the double standard is so astonishing, because if it were Black students being targeted by white students, they would have shut it down within an hour. They would have suspended those students and it would have been over. But it seems to be okay in America today to blame American Jews for what's taking place in the Middle East and to harass them, to threaten them. And it is unacceptable. And the universities were lost, I believe, a long time ago. Some of the Christian universities have been impacted in the same way. The most important thing that people can do is get information. What's happening at the universities that you're connected to? Maybe the ones that you graduated from, are they engaging in these types of activities as well? And then you vote with your dollars.
Dr. Carol Swain, ladies and gentlemen, and Dr. Swain, as horrible and as terrible as these attacks on Jewish students have been, and we have seen since October 7th, I think it's a good reminder that Christian students have been under attack for a very long time on many of these same campuses. Their voices have been marginalized. Conservative students, their voices have been marginalized, and they have been targets of this viral mob.
Well, Todd, I can tell you back when I was at Vanderbilt, there was a policy imposed that resulted in about 15 Christian groups losing their student affiliation. And at that time, we tried to get the Muslim students and the Jewish students to stand with us because we thought they would be impacted in the same way. The Jewish students didn't want to get involved. The Muslim students said they were a cultural group. It didn't affect them. The secular humanist president stood with us, but at that time, Christian groups were targeted because of their beliefs in Jesus Christ and their beliefs in certain standards. And what we have found is that conservative students at these colleges and universities, Christian schools, as well as some of the conservative ones, are targeted because of who and what they are. But what is happening with Jews is so different because there are young people that if they look Jewish, they really are afraid, or if they're known to be Jewish, to walk across campus, they're being threatened. They're being called dirty Jews. And then I know some Jews that don't physically look like Jews. And I had a young woman tell me that she felt pretty safe because she doesn't present as Jewish. What kind of country is this that people have to live in that kind of terror?
You're absolutely right. And again, the message here, Christians and Jews have to stand together. The foundations of our country, Judeo-Christian, we've got to stand together. They're coming after all of us. And the
That's
problem is,
right.
Dr. Swain, and I'll give you the last word on this. The problem is if we don't take a stand, then we will lose the day. So that's why we have to stand up to this horrible evil that has infected our great nation.
But Todd, I know you know this, but to really understand what's taking place, it requires biblical knowledge. There's no one that's talking about the Middle East that can come up with a rational kind of understanding if they don't have biblical knowledge. And for Christians, it's very clear what we need to do. We need to stand with Israel. That replacement theology that used to be pushed by certain denominations, has no biblical grounding. And so we really need to go back to first principles. This is a time to have courage, and we will be held accountable, and our nation will be held accountable by the decisions made by our leaders.
All right. Well, Dr. Swain, we appreciate you coming on the program. Great to reconnect, and we'll have to get you back on very soon.
Thank you so much.